It's just fun to look back at I like doing it from time to time.
December 8th, 2013. On behalf of my bandmates Joe and Seth, I'm Dave. This is the Biff Podcast. Volume 2 of the Parker Scene Remembrance Discussions. I'm joined tonight by former Biff drummer Matt Alvord.
Yeah.
And former Parker Scene extraordinaire Drew Chiacchieri, who also has appeared on some Biff albums, or Biff album, I guess. Biff Returns.
Yeah.
You laid some bass down for us on that. So, thanks for joining me, guys. I had this idea to look back at the music scene that occurred in the small town that we grew up in, because I think it was kind of special. It was in the late 90s. Grunge was still huge.
I feel like it was more in the, at least for me, more in the nu metal era. I think grunge had passed.
That was definitely on its way in.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this was the late 90s.
Yeah.
But when I talked to Rita on the last episode, we kind of explored like the context of the whole situation, especially like locally in Parker. Parker is a small town, kind of rural.
I would say it was rural. It's
not so much anymore, but predominantly white, upper middle class, I guess. And so a bunch of teenagers playing music, forming their own bands, playing a lot of shows for each other, basically. Because, in a small town where there's nothing to do, I mean, I always look back and think music kept me out of trouble, kept all of us out of a lot of trouble, probably. Gave us something to do in this town. There wasn't a whole lot going on. And I always wonder if anything like this ever happened, or how often this kind of thing happens in other towns.
I think it's a good point. Like, when I was listening to you and Rita talk about it, I guess I had kind of just taken it for granted, but when you brought up that point, I was like, I guess that is kind of unique. And, I think it was pretty cool. Yeah,
it was something special for sure.
So, like, a few days before Dave, Facebooked me, there's the internet for you, about getting together and doing this.
Facebooked your ass.
I was cleaning out my old little, art room / studio / gold recovery room / all the hobbies I've ever had crammed into this little room, because we're getting ready for the baby to come, and I found my old band's CD, and, I plugged it in, just to listen and get some laughs, and there's a few instrumental tracks that we recorded because Nick couldn't write lyrics to save his life, and thank God he didn't, because there are actually some flashes of brilliance on there. I was really impressed with what we had written towards the end of our existence, as a group, and then Dave Facebooks me the next day or whatever, and hey, we're gonna go over the Parker music scene. I was like, shoot, I was just reliving it kind of when I was cleaning up the basement, and it's funny, you think back to the band you were in and all the bullshit you went through with those people, and how at the time you didn't like them or you did like them or whatever, and whoever you're with. I mean, I think you guys have probably all stayed in real good contact with each other, but I lost touch with all those guys, and just kind of was thinking about them and wondering how they're doing and where they are in life right now,
Yeah.
But yeah, it was cool to see, listen to the CD. And of course, half the CD is scratched because, I don't know if you're like me, but I put a CD in the CD player, and then when it comes out, it just gets put on the car seat, and then it ends up falling on the floor, and then I don't find it for a month, and
I definitely had that one. I'll have to see if I can find if I still have it.
Yeah. That's the only one. And it's got the blue CDR backing, style.
How did you guys record this?
So Eric bought a 4-track recorder. You know, the like
Tape?
Yeah, tape.
Fostex?
It was like this big. I don't remember what brand it was. It was blue. It was like, it might have been a Digitech, or maybe whatever.
Tanscam? I don't know. There's
Yeah.
a bunch of different ones.
It was a mixer though.
It had a mixer on it, but it wasn't like really well. It wasn't like a really fancy mixer. But we did it in my basement, which had terrible acoustics. Like I remember for whatever reason, we decided to set up like down the length of the hall facing into so we didn't have much space for the sound to go. And then finally at the end we decided to like put everything at one end, so we were playing like into the so we had more space for the sound to travel, and it sounded a little bit better, but it was still bad because I had like unfinished walls in there and everything. But anyway, we used that track, and I think we did it like we played it all live as we recorded it, but like only one track recorded at a time. Like we only had one thing like plugged in, so we'd play everything like 4 times, to record each song. Yeah. It was just like a tedious, awful process. I know this is after we got out of high school, but I remember when we were talking about that with Biff, like how it was tedious and time consuming and awful to record. But like,
I think you could probably write a small book about bad recording techniques utilized by high school students. Like, you do shit that you think is going to make it sound awesome, or you're being experimental, or you think that's like actually how they record stuff.
And where do you come up with this shit? Like Elysium, our first tape was just done with a boombox tape recorder thing, Sony, and we put it in a trash can down the hall, thinking that was going to make a difference.
In a fucking trash can.
Yeah, something about like the symmetry of the cylinder was going to like balance the sound.
Yeah, it just sound like that, like a kazoo.
In the shed, didn't you have like taped up microphones in like the corners of the shed?
The corners?
I feel like you did. Or you definitely had one suspended and hanging down in the middle of the room.
I do that shit now.
Well, that's not so bad, but
drum overheads.
I seem to remember, because remember Steve Albini recorded In Utero, and the way he recorded it supposedly was he put a bunch of microphones along the walls, and I feel like you tried to do that in the shed. I could be wrong though.
That might be. Well, for not knowing what we were doing, we did all right, I guess.
Well, yeah, and it's like we were able to capture that time period, and we'll always have it now, which is kind of cool because we can, like we're doing now, look back and think, oh my god, that's terrible recording techniques. But
it makes me want to pull up my Torque cassette and get those songs off.
Yeah, I want to hear that too. Matt, before he moved to Colorado, was in a band called Torque.
Oh.
And I never heard him until probably when we were doing Apsis or something, but
probably Biff.
And I remember thinking it sounded really good. I was impressed with how it sounded.
And our recording technique was my buddy Scott. It was just my buddy Scott and I. That was pretty much a band. We had a guy that sang at our first show, which was at a school. What were they called? Like, not dance, but what was it before a dance?
Social?
Recital?
Social, no. Yeah, it might have been a social, something like that. But anyway, this was in 7th grade.
Sock hop?
I don't know. It might have been social. But the way we recorded that is that he had a Fisher-Price, my first, what was that called? My first boombox or something like that.
The little microphone, yeah. Joe had one of those. We should have used that.
The thing sounded like we knew at the time that it was like a toy, but we recognized that it actually recorded pretty damn well, and it did. Like we recorded that thing live, and it actually sounds pretty good, or at least we thought. I'd love to hear it now and then see what we thought was.
Do you even still have a cassette player around here?
I don't know.
Those kids today.
Yeah, they just
fancy laptops.
They just do it on their iPhones, man. Like, seriously. make a music video with your iPhone.
Mm-hmm.
I think there's apps for that. I think there's an app to have a band on your iPhone.
So now, one fun thing Reed and I did was just remember all the bands that were a part of it. So you had, of course, Biff.
Of course, Biff.
You had Elysium,
Oh yeah.
which was my other band.
What was his name? He was on bass. I remember
Sean.
Yeah. O'Toole, right?
Right.
Yeah, I remember I saw them play at like Club PHS once, and his bass reminded me of that. For some reason, that song the Marcy Playground did, that St. Joe on the school bus, when it's like doo 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 doo, you know, like it was sweet.
Uh-huh.
I always remembered that from Elysium.
Yeah, that's a good point. Club PHS, I don't know if you guys talked about that, but that was my first Biff show.
Yeah.
Was seeing you guys play, and that was when Jensen quit the band.
Right.
And I had kind of known at that point, like I'd already talked to Joe about possibly auditioning to be the drummer. And so I was kind of going to see you guys play. And I think you and Elysium played at that show, maybe?
Maybe.
Yeah.
But yeah, so Club PHS was like a little talent show at our high school, Ponderosa High School.
I remember I was kind of like tagging along because I met Matt in Keysecker's art class, and he always wore his like Tool shirt with the shirt over it, and like that kind of drew, well, not drew me to you, but like, I remember I liked Tool, you liked Tool when I was younger, and then we had gym class together too, and I remember tagging along with you and Mouse, or not Mouse,
Fetus.
Yeah.
I was Mouse.
You were Mouse, and Fetus.
Wait, I was in a gym class with Fetus?
Was it Scouron maybe?
It might have been Fetus, because I seem to remember he... I remember he was in a gym class that he didn't go to at all. Like, the last 3 months, he just didn't go.
Yeah. I remember walking around the track when we were supposed to be running the mile, and we're talking about this Club PHS thing, and I was excited to maybe go see, a younger band, or a band that I was kind of looking up to, because at the time I met one of my friends, and man, this is memory lane right now, but we decided one day that we were going to make a band. His name was Nathan, and I was like, I'm going to play the bass, and he was like, I'm going to play the guitar, and it's going to be awesome. Well, we got guitars and basses, and it wasn't that good, because we just plugged into his dad's stereo in the basement, and we didn't have any amps or any of that business. But then, I don't know, with the Tool connection, we kind of, I would say, hit it off, and then I just kind of followed suit and followed the Biff career.
Well, yeah, so how does that... Yeah, tell us your full story. If that was your first kind of band experience, how did you get into Forsaken Toad then?
Well, at the time, I was pretty good friends with another Andrew. You guys know him as Pelican. Mm-hmm. But Andrew Winkler, he was pretty good at percussion. He was on the percussion line for Ponderosa, and he, after that little stint with my buddy Nate, he was a year younger than me, and so he couldn't drive. I don't really remember why we didn't finish or do anything other than that. We just kind of talked about it. I remember I was in a computer class with one of the business people there at Ponderosa, and we had to make up a email name, and I had it for years after that. But it was the first band name we thought of, and we wanted to be called Drain, but with 2 A's. So I was Drain Bassman forever.
That's where that came from.
Even after, you remember that email? But yeah, so then Winkler and I had been chatting about music, and he knew a guy that he worked with at Walmart that played guitar, and so we got together with him, and I knew a guy I worked with at Safeway that played. His name was Jeff Frerich, and he went to, I don't know, drugs, high school of drugs. Like, he was always,
DC Oaks.
I don't know if it was that, but he was a really pretty good guitarist. He just wanted to smoke pot all the time and play guitar and play 311 songs. So I was like, we'd be jamming and he'd be just coming in with like some 311 riff, and we're like, Jeff, not now. And then I remember they like, as they unceremoniously kicked me out of the band, the same thing happened to Jeff. Like I don't know why those guys operate the way they did, but like, we packed up the cars out of his, because we practiced at his place, and we packed up the cars and like took off out of there to lunch with him. And during lunch, we made sure he drove separately, and then we like sat him down and we're like, Jeff, this just isn't working out. And he's like, why? And everybody just like looked at me, and I was like, well, you're kind of stoned a lot of the time and blah blah blah, which is like how music should be played, I guess. I don't know, but anyway,
that's something that Reed and I mentioned, is how like, surprisingly, like, there wasn't a lot of drugs going on in our scene.
No, it was like a real clean cut,
yeah,
kind of, I don't know, not really the hardcore band scene. Parker was like, I don't know, it was like a band scene, but there was like an air of like,
I mean, I'm sure there was plenty of kids doing drugs, but
I don't think the bands themselves were doing a whole lot of drugs. Yeah. But you're right. But the thing is, like, the one thing I wanted to mention that you guys, I feel like you guys kind of skipped over in your synopsis of the Parker band scene. At least for me, like the big moment for me was there were two shows at, remember Bob? I think his name was Bob. Like, I think it was his parents were building like a house out way back, like behind the pinery.
Right, yeah.
And he had like this big house party.
Yeah.
And one of them wasn't so big, and the other one was huge. And there were kids from all over there.
It's like an unfinished house.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was fun.
And we played in that, was it like a shed or something? Or like a garage?
Barn or garage or...
Was that where Joe broke his bass?
No,
smashed it?
That was a different show.
That was the barn.
The barn show.
The barn show.
This was
show,
like,
yeah.
This was before.
This was before you joined Biff.
Yeah. This was when I was playing with Tim and Brad.
Yeah, and that was the night you broke our kick head.
Yeah, because I knew Joe. And so anyway, we're playing in this garage.
It was freezing.
Like, it was like as cold as it is now. But you get all these kids in there, and a lot of those kids were definitely like smoking pot and stuff. Probably not anything worse than that for the most part. But I mean, there was drinking and there was. But you're right. For the most part, the bands didn't partake.
But what were you saying was your like defining moment?
Well, I think that show was a pretty big, because there were just a lot of kids there. I remember there being, I don't know, I could be exaggerating in my memory, but I feel like there were at least like 50 people there.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah.
I mean, were you like happy with your band's performance?
No.
But you were just like, wow, you're just playing in front of that many people.
Yeah. And did Elysium play that show?
Biff did, I think, with Corey.
And then, because Brad was, there was another band that was playing that show, and I didn't know any of those people, and I still don't know what band that was.
I don't know. The only other band I remember playing there, it might have been a different night, but like Andy Mack and maybe Adam Frank and a couple guys had like a jam, instrumental space rock kind of thing. They
played this song from Astroman.
Manor Astroman.
Yeah. And I thought it was so badass because they played that track. It has this cool, like, it's kind of like a surf rock riff.
Oh yeah.
But when they played it, I had never heard the song, and it's a pretty obscure band. But they rocked it out. I was like, whoa, that's awesome. So I went down to Best Buy like the next day with Nick, and I told Nick, like, this was a common thing. We'd go to Best Buy and he'd like buy records and stuff because he had money. I didn't have money, so I'd like suggest some stuff and he'd buy it. And I was like, dude, buy this Manor Astroman. So I'm like, it's, I've heard this song, it's really awesome. And he bought it, and the CD was terrible. Like, we didn't like it at all, except for that one song.
Uh-huh. Well, so yeah, I mean, once you joined Biff, I don't remember the first show you played with us, do you?
I think the first show that I played with you guys was the Jaime, or what is it?
Euphrates? No, Jaime's.
Jaime's.
Oh, right, Jaime's Pub, which
We had to
was
get
later Wyatt's Torch.
Yeah.
Oh.
Or before that, what was it, Bottoms Up?
Yeah, it's been a million things, and now it's closed.
Yeah.
But I think that was my first show with you guys. I could be wrong, but that was with Bastard Squad, and I remember
Bastard Squad.
Yeah.
Dude.
Yeah, let's see if we can name the list, because we got...
Shit. That was
Sidetracked there.
Andrew D'Amour's band, wasn't it? Yeah.
Yeah, so Biff Elysium, Bastard Squad, Pepper's Ghost, which was Rita's band. She was in another band before that called Mystical Union, which I think that band played before I ever have any memory of knowing you, so you might not have seen them. Old Dodo, which was Hereshka's deal with Bustin'. They were a pretty big deal. They were...
I don't really remember them.
Of course, your band, Forsaken Toad. There was a band called Bad Andy.
Yeah, that was one of my friends, Justin Kaminsky.
I thought that you knew them.
And, shoot, I don't remember the...
My
and Scott Miller was the bass player. And he was in another band called Loser Syndrome.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yeah.
I recorded a little album for them with my disc player.
With Kyle Baines. And, we kind of went along with those guys a little bit. And I know Forsaken Toad did one show, we were together for 3 years. I think we averaged one show a year. And it was I remember we played with you guys at some coffee shop. And that was, I think, our best performance.
Coffee shop?
You don't remember that?
It was with Apsis. It wasn't with Biff. It was with Apsis.
Oh.
But it was freaking in Arvada or something.
Yeah, we played
40th and
Oh,
yeah, it was
small gatherings.
Yeah, small gatherings. That was it. I remember too, my neighbors, they wanted to come so bad, and we gave them the directions, but we gave them the wrong you know how if you don't put a south or whatever on there, it takes you to some other place. They showed up 3 hours after the show started, and we made it, but damn it, they were pretty mad. But anyway, we played with them and you guys, and I can't remember the last one, but we played that small gatherings place twice.
That was a coffee shop?
No. That one was an actual coffee shop. We were in the corner in the back, and I remember we played our cover of Stinkfist, and when Nick announced it, I grabbed the mic and I was like, "We want to apologize to Tool for this," you know.
So this is a separate show from the small gathering.
Yeah, it was another one. We played
we were at that one too.
Yeah, where was that?
I wonder if that was at my aunt's coffee shop.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
It was in the back. It was kind of a big. There was a big open room that had a vaulted ceiling, I guess.
What happened with that?
She only had it for maybe a year or something. Gave it up.
Did she? I imagine she was leasing the building.
Probably, yeah. I don't even know.
Huh.
That's down on 32nd and Larimer.
I bet
that's right. It was
hot property these days.
Yeah, it's been a couple different things. I've noticed it when I drove by it.
But yeah, so we played there, and that was our best thing with you guys. And I think there might have been another band with us.
It's funny to think how Apsis started in 2002, which was really just kind of at the tail end of all this. I mean, we were all out of high school by that point. But
yeah.
So Reed and I kept talking about John's other band, which I kept calling Pow Wow, and I realized later that the name that they went with for a while was Aquabats, and then they were Race Car X. Sean, Seamus, and Joe started a thing called Jim Jones Show Band and Review. That was right after Joe left Elysium, and then I ended up playing drums for the one show they played. Die the Flu, do you remember them?
They
They were also known as The Custodian and Damaged Goods.
Were they a Deftones cover band?
Yeah,
they definitely played some Deftones songs. But yeah, that's definitely where they got their name. The other kind of interesting historical piece to this is like that you might not think about now, or people might not realize, is the influence of the internet at the time. How it was really like coming to be, I guess you'd say.
With like Napster and those things, or
yeah, that was probably a little bit later, or basically the same time, I guess.
Yeah,
around the year 2000. But
well, that's a good point, because
just compared to now, like
being in a band now, the way that you
promote.
interact with your fans, and when you're a small band, you don't really necessarily have fans or your friends.
Yeah.
And the way that you grow is totally different from what back then. I mean, you played shows, you would get your friends to come to those shows. That was really all you had, and you maybe get written up in a newspaper if you start to generate some interest.
Yeah. And of course, recording for kids today is so much easier than it was for us.
Yeah.
I mean, I worked an entire summer to buy that multi-track mini disc recorder that we used for all of our stuff.
And no one had anything like that. Like you, that was like such like a high-tech piece of equipment.
Yeah.
Like that you had this mini disc recorder.
Yeah. And so we would use that to record, and we made pretty decent recordings for like not knowing what the hell we were doing. And then we had a CD burner, 1X.
Oh.
You know, and we were you'd have to sit there and you'd have to have like 5 seconds of silence in between, and it would just record it as it played or whatever. And yeah, I was just sitting all night making copies to pass out at school.
I remember I got a copy of Biffcast from Joe in like our Rise of Nation State Germany class we were in together. Like I met him, I think it was his senior year, or your senior year too, right?
Yeah.
And I don't know, I think I saw you guys at Club PHS, and then I recognized him in class. He always wore the Tool shirts and stuff, and well, Iron Maiden too, right?
Yeah.
I remember too, he had just gotten like an Eddie tattoo on his arm, didn't he get like a...
It's kind of
Eddie.
It's not exactly Eddie.
Oh.
It's kind of in that same...
That vein, same vein.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
It's a skeleton playing a bass.
Yeah, that was it. And...
He still has it, by the way.
I remember when he got that was his first tattoo, wasn't it?
it was.
I remember he was like... I think he was putting stuff on it because it was fresh.
Yeah, it was like...
Fresh in there, but... I remember getting that album and just laughing at that picture of Santa on the...
That was me and my great uncle.
Nice. It was an awesome picture. But yeah.
So, you're... Are you Matt's age? Or you
I was a year behind. I was a year behind Matt.
Okay, so...
I'm like at the end of your your rise to power.
You were
You're
what?
Well, and when I think about it, like Loser Syndrome, Bad Andy, Forsaken Toad, those guys were all basically your age, right?
Yeah.
Like, and then a ton of bands, class of 2000, which was you and Dave and Jensen and Rita.
Yeah, and then there was some
and then
guys
older than
older
that.
than us.
But in my class, like class of 2001, there wasn't anyone that like that. There were very few people that I knew at Ponderosa that I can't even think of any
that played music
that were into music. I mean, they obviously that were playing. Yeah. Like, can you think of anyone that was class of 2001?
No, I don't know. But I was gonna say, Drew, I appreciate, you know, like your enthusiasm for what we were doing.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, like you always. I mean, it's funny because you always used to talk about how like you were like nervous to meet me, or something.
Yeah, I remember like talking to Matt in art class or whatever it was, and I was wanting like an album or something. I think of maybe it was an Apsis thing. I don't know.
No, it was probably Biff.
Probably Biff.
It was
Oh, it was probably ICBD.
Yeah.
And he's like, well, just, you know, like, go ask Dave. You know, I was like, oh man, I don't know. Like, I don't remember when I first started talking. I don't know if it was until we've ever played a show with you guys that I finally worked up the courage, you know.
Yeah.
But like, yeah, I didn't need to be a wuss like that. I don't know.
Did you see him as like a rock star?
I wouldn't go that far. I saw him as somebody, you know, I could look up to, because he was kind of, I don't know, looked like somebody that belonged in the, we'll say, quote, industry, in, you know,
my hair all long
Parker.
Yeah.
You know, just somebody that looked like, you know, they knew what they were doing. They didn't want to bother with, like, somebody else that was bumbling around trying to figure out the, you know, the band thing for themselves, you know.
Well, and I felt the same way when I would look at John and, you know, old Dodo and those guys that were a little bit older than me, because they really had their shit together.
Yeah.
But yeah, you know, you gotta have those people you look up to that inspire you to move forward.
Part of it too is that I think you looked like 10 years older than anyone else in high school.
That was it too.
Yeah.
You'd have,
That's funny though. Like, I never would have thought that I would be intimidating to anybody,
I know.
especially in my cow car.
Right. Yeah, I don't know why. It's like, it's been so long now, like, I don't even really remember. You know, I do remember, like, not wanting to talk to you because I didn't know you, and I knew Matt, but, like, other than that, I don't know, like, I don't remember what it felt like to be intimidated, you know? Like, I don't know. But yeah, we had a long time or a good long run of, like, shows in and out over the years since then, you know?
Mm-hmm.
But that's not on this recording.
I think one thing Rita and I mentioned was there was something about the geographical location of the town, how it was kind of away from everything. It's like we were like this isolated like area.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Because like I'm just thinking of you know, living in Denver now, or like, you know, like
Littleton or something.
Yeah, it's like not that contained. So
everything's so accessible here, you know, in Littleton or whatever. And I remember that too. Like, you know, you plan like a day trip to go to Guitar Center, you know, it's like a voyage to go over there, and, you know, got to tie in, I don't know, we always tied in like a lunch break, you know, and then we'd head back. And it was so funny, we never got anything done at practice. Like, seriously, we had the one, like, CD we tried to record, we did record it, but, like, those songs, like, we had 12 songs for 3 years, you know, and, like, we'd still fuck them up at shows, you know. It was just an interesting...
many of our practices just turned into GoldenEye tournaments.
Yes.
Not ours. How did I miss out on that?
Not Biff so
we
much.
We were all business.
Yeah, with Elysium.
I mean, we would practice hard for like an hour and a half, 2 hours, like just solid. And then after that, we would dick around a little bit. But we didn't play video games, really. I don't think we ever played any video games. We just go into your room and just mess around.
Yeah.
Say that again. You'd go where and do what?
Go mess around in Dave's room at the end of practice.
Nice. Mm-hmm. That's what we did down in the basement with the Basement Jam series. What was your first show, like, ever?
Well, so Joe and I were Boy Scouts. There was it was some kind of a Boy Scout, Girl Scout mixer.
Nice.
And it was that
fucking Catalina wine mixer.
It was at that same Main Street center.
Oh, the Quonset hut?
No, the one down the street. That was the church.
Oh yeah.
And we played in the gym. It sounded terrible. But actually, I don't know if that was the very first one or if it was one of our guitar teacher's recitals. Robert Shockey.
It was just you and Joe? You played something?
No, it was me, Corey, and Joe.
At the mixer?
Yeah. Oh, okay, so that wasn't the first one. That was the second one, because Sean was with us at that point, too. But before that, like, probably that summer, we played a recital.
Was that, like, Grassman era?
Oh, yeah. Grassman, Angry at God. It was very early Elysium. And then, of course, the real first show, though, the big first one was at the Dome, the Kwanzaa Hut.
Okay.
And that was, like, in January of 97.
Whoa.
And that was a big show. Like, a lot of kids showed up to that because it was, like, the first one, and everyone was really excited about it. And that was Mystical Union, us, the Aquabats, and Old Dodo.
What year would that have been?
97.
Oh.
What went into getting those places, like, booked? Because I remember thinking that it was, like, a horrendous mess to try and get a venue booked in anywhere in Parker. That's why we ended up, like, way up in Arvada for our first gig, and, because we didn't know how to go about any of that.
Yeah, that's something I touched on with Rita. It was my mom's boss. She was in real estate, and her boss was a member of the Lions Club, so he had a little bit of pull.
Nice.
And they had already been trying to, like, organize, like, youth nights and stuff for teens to do. And so my mom approached him and was like, my son's got a band and he knows a bunch of kids that play music and they'd like to do some concerts. So he funded it got it funded however he did it. And that's why we had, we always had to have the security officer and no moshing allowed.
Yeah.
All that.
That's right.
And they pay for the sound, man, too. I forgot about that.
God, you remember moshing? Like, oh man, that's old. Like, because I don't know, like that, I went to Static X, last year when he came to the Gothic. And, I mean, I think the pit was pretty, ravenous, but I stayed back in the back. But that term mosh pit, it brought me back to that scene, and, like, no moshing allowed kind of thing,
Yeah.
You'd always have to warn the 5 people that were there. No.
It might get out of control.
No.
One of my favorite memories is probably one of the best Elysium shows we ever played. It was right after Joe left, and it was our first show just with me on drums. And we had a great show. We played a lot of good covers, like did a little Hendrix. Of course, did a couple Bush covers.
Nice.
Whatever. It was a good show. I remember at the end thinking, yeah, that was like a great show. But we have video of it, and I'm like playing with my shirt off, and so we're playing, like, I think Tapeworm. I don't know if you remember that song. And at the end, we're like doing the big, like, go crazy thing, like, big crescendo, and so I'm like, I stand up and I'm like pounding on the drums, and I like go do, and as I hit the floor tom, I trip on the throne and like just fall back and go head over heel. And so there was not that many kids there, maybe like 10 at the most. And I remember, like, I'm having my big rock moment. I, like, throw my sticks out to the crowd, and you hear them ricochet off the back wall.
They were running away from the sticks.
Yeah, like, why is he throwing them at us? We showed up.
One of the most embarrassing moments I ever had on stage was our freshman year, we did a show at Ponderosa. I think it was like on a Friday night or something after hours. And back then I could not tune a guitar. Like, I didn't have it was before like those nice chromatic Boss tuners or anything. And so we had a song and it was drop D, and then after that we were going to tune up to standard for the rest of it. And I had this plan where like I was gonna use my little tuner, but like it wasn't working, and I couldn't just like do it by ear, so I had to hand my guitar to Corey to tune it for me.
That's your most embarrassing.
Oh God!
I guarantee you, no one even noticed.
No, so my most embarrassing moment just happened 2 weeks ago with Remember the Radio, but we won't talk about it. But that was just one of my, maybe not the most, but that was a bad moment for me. My
most embarrassing was at that show, in that show. I think it was the second one at the Bob, the Bob Cold house party show. Because it was the one where I broke your drum head. Because it was so cold that and I played hard, and I'd never played on this kit before. It was like Joe's like blue.
Yeah, Ludwig.
And I never played on it, so. And it was freezing cold in that barn, so like the head must have been, like 30 degrees, so it just couldn't take it, and so I just went right through it, and we ended up like duct taping it, and it just sounded like shit anyway. Like it just was horrible. But my most embarrassing moment, I don't know if it was before or after I broke the head, but we were playing 3 songs that night. We were playing
the Filter cover.
Filter Under, which I wasn't really into Filter, but I dug that song, so I knew that song, and then there were these 2 other songs that we were playing. So I was playing with my buddy Tim Balduke, who played bass, and then Brad Lopez, who was at that point, Brad was like way into like punk and stuff, and I, was not into punk at all. So Tim was kind of like on the fence between the 2 of us, and so he was down with playing punk songs. So they both knew these songs. One of them, No Use for a Name, I think was one of the bands, and I can't remember the other one, but I did not know the songs, and like we practiced maybe twice before this show, like maybe 3 times. So anyway, in the middle of the song, like I just forgot it, like I just forgot the song, which is weird to think about because a punk song it's not like there's any. It's not like there's a huge change or anything in the middle of a punk song. But, in the middle of the song, like, it got to the point where, like, Tim and Brad were just, like, looking at me like, what, like, I was way off, apparently. And so we just stopped playing.
Oh, that sucks.
It sucked. Because everyone was just like, wow, that was horrible.
You guys were like, stop, guys, I got this. I'm sorry, hold on. We should have done that a bunch, like, at all the little gigs we did, like, it was a terrible experience. But, you have to do that to get better.
Yeah.
Like, I just remember, I don't know if I was embarrassed, like, by something I did or, like, embarrassed by the band that I was a part of, like, just, I don't know. We tried, and I just remember Nick had zero confidence on the mic up front singing, and, like, he didn't know what to do, and he never like felt the music, so he'd hang onto the microphone and just like slap the mic stand like yeah, and like he always like look back at us like, is this going good, guys? Yeah. I remember that being kind of embarrassing. I was just like, oh man, like feel it, but he never did. I remember sometimes at practice, too, Eric would get off in his own little world, like, soloing. I don't know if you remember any of his music he wrote, but he liked to write in these really weird keys, and he would go off on these long, like, Zeppelin-esque soloing tangents, and while we were playing, like, Winkler and I we would, like, sometimes we'd play the same riff over and over again, like, underneath his solo. And, like, one measure, Winkler just stopped drumming, and I'd keep playing. And then, like, he'd come back in, and then we'd go a measure together, and then I'd stop playing. Like, Smith never fucking noticed, dude. But I don't think he ever did that at a show. It was just one of the things I remember about practice.
The funny thing about Lyceum was I would go nuts. Head banging, jumping around, and the rest of them didn't move at all. I keep wanting to bring this back to, like, comparing the way things were for us then to, like, kids today. Like, because I brought up the internet thing, but, like,
Yeah.
I really don't understand what kids listen to today, because I work with a population of teenagers that are more of the juvenile delinquent types, but all of them are into like hip hop and like, the
Dubstep, womp womp.
KS 107.5, like where every song is just about sex or money or like how great the artist is. And I don't know what kind of rock music kids listen to anymore. And with my band now, Remember the Radio, we're looking at, we want to play more all ages shows because kids care so much more about music than a bunch of adults in a bar do. Like kind of like get a little bit of the taste of that scene we had when we were teenagers too.
But you have no idea if kids would even listen to your kind of music.
No, I don't.
'Cause it's like, what? Yeah, I have no idea.
I mean, what?
There isn't really a rock scene. There's like indie rock, I guess. But yeah, I don't know. It seems more and more like kids are into older stuff. Like metal's kind of making a comeback, I guess. And
there's people that don't think that something like Nirvana will ever happen again. Just mostly because of the nature of the music business now.
Yeah, it's hard for bands to be. I mean, the recording industry now just pushes, what is most broadly appealing, and they push it fucking hard. Like, so if you get somebody like Lady Gaga or I don't know, any of those that have like a wide appeal, they just fucking pimp them like crazy.
Yeah.
But yeah, like I don't know if I don't see like a rebellious rock act getting that big anymore.
Well, anything else you guys want to bring up that we left out before we wrap it up?
Nah.
I think I'm good.
All right. Well, I think the point, it's fun to remember, and I feel really fortunate. It was a really good way to be a teenager and grow up that way, playing music in a tight-knit scene.
Well, I think what you were saying earlier about it being like, iconic of like a high school environment is pretty true I'm sure everywhere, like you were saying. But I think it's more so in like an isolated environment like that, like geographically, like there's nothing to do. And it wasn't like we were a farming town where everybody was farming. Like, I think you might find that to be a difference somewhere, but I think most kids are going to gravitate towards music.
Well, but I think a lot of high schools probably have maybe a band or two or three, but like what Dave kind of recognizes, there were a bunch of kids all in a bunch of bands around the same time. It was kind of like a phenomenon that probably is rare, I would think.
Yeah, I mean, for a while there, we did shows every month that had different bands playing. I mean, you'd be in the rotation, you might only play once every 3 or 4 months because there were so many bands that were playing. Like, yeah, it was neat. Glad you guys were there with me.
Yes.
Thanks for going down memory lane.
Yeah, thank you, Dave.
Yep. We're gonna next time be talking to John Horeshka, who is in Old Dodo and the Aquabats. So I'll be looking forward to that.
Sometime we should do, not that anyone is actually going to listen to these, but it'd be fun to do like the next era after that, because I feel like the Double Plus Town era of, and later Biff before Apsis, or when Apsis, that was like a fun time too, going up to Fort Collins and recording up there.
Oh yeah,
that was fun.
All right, well, we'll see about that. On behalf of my bandmates Seth and Joe, maybe I'll talk to them about all this too if I ever see them again. It's been a while.
It's been a while.
This is the Biff Podcast. Thanks for listening.
They played that song on there too, on the API.